Hello, and welcome to today's Textile Exchange webinar, co-hosted by FSC, Sustainable Forest Management Solutions, a Textile Exchange webinar. Today's presentation will be recorded and sent out to all registered participants and also will be posted on the Hub. We will have a Q&A portion throughout the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box on the webinar doc. Any unanswered questions will be answered afterward via email. Now on to Simone Zeissel with Textile Exchange. Simone?
I was muted. Thank you, Rose, and welcome everyone to this webinar. It's excited to have you all with us today, this morning or this afternoon. Welcome. Thank you. Today we want to explore how sourcing man-made cellulosic fibers, or MMCF, from sustainably managed forests can help keep forests healthy for future generations and how an FSC certification can support this. We will learn about the forest standards as well as the chain of custody standard of FSC and hear about programs and projects complementing the standard work. Maybe you've taken part also in our last webinars, that was with Canopy and PFC. And if not, just sign up to our MMCF Hub community and find all recordings there. Next slide. So before we dive into the exciting topic of today, let me remind you of our Antitrust Statement, that we value diversity of views, expertise, opinions, backgrounds, and experiences, but we expect that members of this community will collaborate by sharing ideas, information, and resources of publicly available information only, and avoid discussions on price, strategic plans, or other private and sensitive information. Thank you. Next slide. I just read last week, actually, that in 2020, there was an increase of 10% in deforestation in the Amazon compared to 2019. And the Amazon being one or the most important ecosystem in the world, showing how important it is that we protect the biodiversity of forests, and forests that do really support us for regulating our climate, provide clean water and healthy soils. They're home for many people and animals, including also endangered and threatened species. So when we think of all the feedstock and all the products that are forest-based, including MMCF fibers like viscose, lyocell, modal, acetate, there is a clear signal that we have to act, and we have to act fast. Because according to our last market report, the Preferred Fiber Materials Market Report, only about 50% of MMCFs are sourced from certified wood. And when we consulted the companies taking part in our annual benchmark program, more than 2/3 of the MMCF sourced by these companies could not be traced back to the country of origin. So a lot to do still for us as an industry. Today's webinar shall provide us insights into the scope of FSC, the standard and impact areas, the challenges, and also the engagement with the industry players and also with brands, for example. There's an opportunity for questions at the end, so please type your questions in the Q&A box throughout the webinar, and we have plenty of time dedicated for that. You can also already see our names. We are joined today by Lisa Kello, Value Chain Development Manager, FSC, and Vicky Tran, Chain of Custody Manager at FSC. Your host from Textile Exchange, I'm Simone Zeissel, Consultant Fiber and Materials, and Prerna Pandey, Program Coordinator at Textile Exchange. But of course, we would like to get to know you. So cameras on, please. Over to you for a brief introduction. Vicky, to you.
Thanks, Simone. My name is Vicky Tran. I am the Chain of Custody Manager at FSC International. I have been with the organization for over 4 years. And my previous experience with working with textiles was supporting brands who were interested in converting their supply chains to more ethical and sustainable sources and solutions. So next I will allow my colleague Lisa to introduce herself.
Thank you, Vicky, and also a very warm welcome from my side. My name is Lisa Kello. I'm a Value Chain Development Manager for FSC International. I lead the work for textiles and packaging. And my background is I have 7 years of experience in sustainable market development, and I've been at FSC for 3 years now. So I am very happy to be here today to introduce to you what we're all about. Next slide, please. So, as we all know, one of the greatest challenges that we're facing today is deforestation. Of course, this is not new. It's something that is dated back to the start of the Industrial Revolution back in the 18th century. And specifically between the decades of 1980 and 1990, this was exacerbated greatly. So when the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro took place, many were expecting there to be an agreement that would help us mitigate or stop deforestation. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And so in 1994, FSC was established as the world's first forest certification system to provide a solution, a market-based solution to protect forests by promoting sustainable forest management. Next slide, please. And one of the unique characteristics of FSC is that it's a democratic member-based organization, which is divided into 3 chambers. We have a social, an environmental, and an economic chamber. So at its foundation, FSC is truly sustainable. Each one of these chambers gets an equal voting right when it comes to deciding the strategic direction of FSC. So for example, in the General Assembly, which by the way is coming up this year virtually, stay tuned, each one of these chambers has an equal voting right. And this is what makes this approach so balanced, right? Also, another thing to note is that members can be organizations, individuals, or companies. So we have a mix of NGOs, big brands, and individuals as part of the FSC membership. Next slide, please. And here we have some numbers in regards to FSC. So as I mentioned, we're a member-based organization. We have over 1,160 members worldwide in 89 countries. We have over 213 million hectares of forest land certified, more than 44,000 chain of custody certificates, and 75,000 organizations that are certified. Next, please. And from a global perspective, FSC has a very strong international network. We have 5 regional offices, 48 network partners, and 6 national representatives, all ready to support and carry out FSC's mission. Next, please. And so some of the main reasons why FSC is seen as the world's most trusted sustainable forest management solution is, of course, that it's trusted by both NGOs and big brands alike. But also, it's a member of the ISIL Alliance. The ISIL Alliance is a global membership association for sustainability standards. Some of the other members include RSPO, Fair Trade, just to name a few. And of course, we're also supported by NGOs, as I mentioned. Some of them include WWF, Rainforest Alliance. But of course, when it comes to textiles, Canopy sees FSC as part of the solution for forest conservation globally and recognizes it as the best option when it comes to sustainable forest management certification. And also, as I mentioned, we're also chosen by thousands of global brands, some of which you will recognize on the screen. Next, please. So Getting to the meat of the matter, what FSC certifications, what are they? So we have forest management certification, which is required for forest operators or forest owners. And it sets the standards for the responsible management of natural forests and plantations. Then we have the Chain of Custody certification, which is required for companies throughout the supply chain. And this certification aims to track the forest products that come, the products that come from the forest all the way to the consumer. The companies that need this certification are the ones that modify, manufacture, transform or label the products until the last step of the chain of custody, where the product is no longer modified. That is when it is moving to the next step, which is the retail and brand owner side. Here, non-certificate holders, which are normally retailers and brand owners, have the option to have a promotional license agreement with FSC, so they can use FSC trademarks to promote the fact that they're using FSC products on their website, on social media, or on their CSR report, for example. Next slide, please. And really, the FSC standard, the FSC Forest Management Standard, is based on 10 principles and criteria, most of which cover environmental and social aspects. But here we have sort of the core characteristics of the standard, which include, first and foremost, no deforestation. So although trees are harvested, there is no net loss of forest over time. Then there's also environmental protection. The standard requires that biodiversity be maintained and high conservation value areas are set aside. So this, in some instances, also includes old growth forests. And then from the social side, when a forest operation is going to be implemented, the forest inhabitants need to be consulted and engaged. In many cases, this refers to indigenous peoples in order to preserve the cultural traditions. And also, another part of the standard, another very important part, is that it requires for forest workers to have a fair wage, but also a safe environment. So they get trainings and safety protocols in place. Next slide, please. And over now to my colleague Vicky to give you some very exciting news on the chain of custody standard.
Thanks, Lisa. So this year, FSC reached a major milestone by incorporating the a set of auditable social compliance requirements within our chain of custody standard. So this means that we have put workers' rights on the agenda for over 40,000 FSC chain of custody certificate holders all over the world. And these requirements cover the effective abolition of child labour. So this means child labour shall not be used within certified organisations. The elimination of all forms of forced or compulsory labour. So employment is on a voluntary basis. Workers can choose to leave their place of employment without any pressure or threats. No discrimination in respects to employment and occupation. So the hiring process and wages and promotions must be fair and equitable. And in regards to the respect of association and the effective right to collective bargaining, workers are able to freely establish their own workers' organizations or join one of their own choosing. And lastly, this is not a new requirement, it's an existing one. It's a key interest, I would assume, for our participants today, that certificate holders must commit to occupational health and safety. This requirement includes appointing an occupational health and safety representative and training staff on occupational health and safety issues within the workplace. The next slide, please. And if you want to learn more about the FSC core labour requirements, FSC is hosting a number of webinars over the following months to cover these requirements in more details. The first set of webinars will cover the core labour requirements, just the basics and fundamentals. And it is open for all interested stakeholders. The registrations for the following dates that you see are already open, so please visit our website if you would like to register. And in the near future, we will do another second series of webinars, which is more technical in focus, and it will focus on the requirements and details and the compliance in regards to those requirements. In addition, if you just would like to stay up to date what's happening in this area, please feel free to sign up to our newsletter, or alternatively, you can join our consultative forum. So from here, I will hand it back to Lisa. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Vicky. So now let's have a look at how the FSC certification works in detail. As you might already know, it's a third-party certification. So as we mentioned, FSC develops the standards for forest management and chain of custody, and also issues the promotional license agreements. However, it's a third party or an accredited certification body, as we call it a CV, that actually does the audit in place and issues the FSC certificates. Now, these CVs, they are usually accredited and controlled by an organization called Assurance Services International, who are the ones that make sure that the CVs are applying the FSC standards correctly in the auditing process. So the first step in order to start the FSC certification process is to actually contact a CV. And you can do this by accessing the page you see on the slide. There you can find a list of all the certification bodies that have FSC or that audit FSC worldwide. Next slide, please. And of course, it goes without saying the incredible value that forests provide. In terms of biodiversity, forests contain over 80% of the world's terrestrial biodiversity. So nearly every square kilometer of a forest may contain over 1,000 species and probably more to discover. 1.6 million people around the world depend on forests for their livelihoods. And also, I mean, many of the products we use that are essential for our daily lives come from forests, not to mention, of course, paper, but also rubber for transportation and textiles. And around 75% of the world's accessible fresh water comes from forests. There's no better filter system than forests. And finally, of course, in terms of climate mitigation, forests are the best carbon sequestrators out there. And just to see the other side of the coin, deforestation and forest degradation are responsible for 20% of greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. So as forests are great, as forest ecosystems provide us with so many services, FSC, with that in mind, has come up with a standard, a procedure that we call the Ecosystem Services Procedure that enables to verify specific positive impacts on ecosystem services. And the ecosystem services we're talking about here are the ones you can see on the screen: biodiversity, carbon sequestration, watershed, conservation, soil conservation, and recreational services. So there are two ways in which companies or organizations can participate in this procedure. Of course, it's important to note that the procedure can be applied sort of as an added value to an already FSC certified forest. So the two ways are: one, through financial sponsorship. So a company can provide money to a forest owner in order for them to verify and quantify these impacts over time. And then also obtain a promotional license to be able to talk about it, communicate about it. And then the other option is to produce FSC 100% products that can carry an ecosystem services claim in the product or in the label if the chain of custody is not broken. So these are some of the things that we're working in terms of climate and impact assessment in forests. Next slide, please. So when it comes to collaborations aimed at mitigating climate impact, FSC is involved in 2 initiatives. The first is with other ICIL members and the gold standard. For those you might know, the gold standard is a voluntary carbon offset program. And what these ICIL members, alongside with FSC and the gold standard, are doing is some pilot projects across different the industries. And the aim or the objective is to define common practices to be able to calculate carbon reductions and sequestration, so that it's easier for companies to report against their science-based targets and other climate performance objectives. And you can read more about it on the link you see on the screen. And then the other initiative is a collaboration with Verra. Verra is, well, they drive large-scale investments to activities that reduce emissions, improve livelihoods, and protect the environment. And this collaboration is about providing access to the carbon benefits by smallholders, which is a group that usually doesn't get this type of access. Another thing within this project is to look for opportunities that connect forest restoration and carbon. Next slide, please. And just so speaking a little bit about the bioeconomy and the transition that we're as a society moving towards, moving away from fossil fuels and more into renewable materials. I just wanted to note here that MMCFs are the 3rd most used fiber in the world, behind polyester and cotton. 6.4% of the total fiber production volume are MMCFs. And it is also the fastest growing fiber. So in terms of KAGR, they are at 6% compared to cotton, which is at 3%. However, it is very important to note that there is still a huge challenge ahead. Still around one third of these MMCFs are coming from high-risk areas or areas with high deforestation. And so this is another reason why looking at FSC as a part of the solution can help mitigate this challenge that we're facing. And if you would like to learn more about these MMCFs, I suggest you have a look at the Textile Exchange Report, which is where these facts have come out from. Next slide, please. All right, so here we can see, most of you probably already recognize these labels. These are the FSC labels that not only allow you to identify products that are responsibly sourced, but also that help you communicate to your consumers that you're supporting the best outcomes for forests and communities worldwide. So the first label we have is the FSC 100% label, which is for products that are manufactured with 100% FSC material. Then we have the recycled label, which is for products that are manufactured with only recycled materials. These could be pre or post-consumer reclaimed materials. And then finally, we have the FSC mix, which is for products that are manufactured with a combination of FSC virgin material and controlled sources. Okay, and for this label, it is important to note that the threshold or the percentage of FSC virgin material must be greater, normally 70%, depending on the control system used, but usually in the percentage system is 70%, while the rest can come from controlled sources or recycled sources. Next slide, please. And well, here, just to look at the overview of how the FSC textiles value chain looks like, we have the forest management certification and chain of custody, and the retailer on the downstream side. And we can see here sort of usually the usual players involved in the textiles value chain. In order to have a labeled garment or product, it is important that the middle, the chain of custody, all of these players are chain of custody certified. So yeah, there are other ways within the standard that can allow for certain outsourcing depending on the risk that are potential solutions to avoid for the smaller players, for example. Next slide, please. So looking at the labels again, more specifically on how they can be applied. So again, a fabric or garment that is made with 100% FSC certified forests can be labeled with the 100% label, FSC label. And some of the materials that are already in this area are viscose, lyocell, rayon, cellulose acetate, and bamboo fibers. Next slide, please. And here we have the mix label. Again, you can mix forest-based FSC forest fibers and fabrics with other non-forest-based fibers or fabrics. So this includes synthetics like polyester and nylon, and also natural fibers like cotton or wool. However, again, and to reiterate, it's important that at least 70% of the forest-based fibers are FSC certified fibers. The rest can be a mix of these other listed here on the screen. Next slide, please. And this is just to show sort of a brief list of the FSC certified dissolving pulps. This list is not exhaustive. And the best way to see who is currently certified is through the FSC database, which I will show you in the coming slides. Next slide, please. Here also, again, a list of some of the FSC fiber manufacturers, FSC certified fiber manufacturers. Again, the best way for up-to-date information of certificate holders, potential suppliers for your chain is checking out the info.fsc.org, which is a database. I will show you. Next slide, please. And here you can see, so this is the FSC database. I invite you to visit it. Here you can, one of the key characteristics is that it adds to the transparency of FSC, because here you can search all the certificate holders that are within our system. You can check using the label. So if you have the license code, you can put it in there and look up, and you will see, or on the screen, it will appear where the certificate holder is based, the address of the company, the name, in addition to the scope of the products that they're using, whether it's wood, bamboo, paper, pulp, whatever it might be, and also the FSC claims that they have within the scope of their certificate. So this could be FSC mix, FSC 100%, or FSC recycled. And another great feature is that you can search by organization, so also by country, but also by certificate. So here, and this is another great way to see whether an organization is certified or not, is you can see the valid certificates, of course, but you can also search by terminated certificates to see what companies are no longer certified or a certificate holder. And you can also search by whether it's a chain of custody or FM certificate. And finally, you have the product area where you can also search for potential suppliers. You can go to, they have 3 different levels of filtering. Of course, the more you add, the more specific you will get. So yeah, it depends what you're looking for. Here on the screen, you have the example for certificate holders in the textiles value chain, but you can also search for paper, packaging, and rubber, of course. And finally, another thing is that you can also search on the left-hand side. You have different sort of themes. So the first one is certificate holders, but you can also look for project certificate holders, and also for trademark license holders. So you can see who has a promotional license with FSC. Next slide, please. And well, here's the exciting part. I would like to share with you some of the FSC certified garments that are labeled in the market. Just to start, we have Masai. It is a Danish company. They are using FSC certified viscose. They even have some of their garments that are 100% FSC. Then we have Cezanne. Cezanne is a French clothing company, also using FSC viscose. And then moving over to the right, we have Hema. Hema is also a Danish company. They're using bamboo fibers for their baby clothing. And the most recent addition is May. May is a underwear, is a German underwear company, and they are using FSC certified modal. And then we have one more very interesting case, which is Allbirds. They are using eucalyptus, FSC certified eucalyptus fibers for the textile, the upper part of the shoe. Next slide, please. And this is sort of, I wanted also to share this with you as your brands and retailers. This might also be of your interest. We also have FSC certified natural rubber. And here you can see some of the companies that are already using FSC certified rubber. We have Athletic, which is a German company, Clarks, Hunter, and Fatface from the UK. Next slide, please. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention and welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Vicky. A lot of insights really on both the standard forestry management standard, but also chain of custody. And we have quite a few questions come in. So I would like to address them to both of you. Please, let's start. We have 15 minutes to go for everyone. So the webinar was scheduled and planned for 45 minutes in total, so plenty of time, but we also have quite a bit questions regarding the labeling. Obviously, many are not aware yet or know the recycled label. Do you see the what would applications be in the textile sector for the recycled label, or is that dedicated to other products?
Well, as it is right now, we are actually currently going to be revising our reclaimed material standard this year. So right now in the scope, we have included wood and paper, but we would like to extend that to textiles as well. And of course, the future is moving more towards recyclability and circularity. So we are really working hard to put some more efforts into that standard so that someday we can have more FSC certified recycled MMCF feedstock, so that it would be very exciting to have one day a fully recycled garment made from FSC fibers. Vicky, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing in addition. You covered the bases.
Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Okay, so it could cover a recycled feedstock that is then using the chain of custody to ensure the content is met.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how about, people also know your labels, of course. The FSC mix labels seem to be new. Is that correct? And will it be, when will it be visible in the industry?
The FSC mix, well, I wouldn't say it's rather new, at least in the paper industry. It's very, well, it's the mostly used for packaging and paper. But in textiles, we have actually, Cezanne, one of the examples I showed you, already has an FSC mix label. And it's quite common, I would say, because of course you have FSC certified fibers, but you can mix it with, which is common, right? Mixing these different types of fibers. We see that all the time in the clothes that we're wearing. So it's, yeah, it's perhaps not as common yet, but I think as we keep transforming the textiles value chain towards sustainable MMCFs, we will see the FSC mix label more and more.
Okay, and how about controlled sources? What do we, in short, what do we have to know about controlled sources?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So controlled sources are, and let me just pull this up here so I can. So, okay, so controlled sources are essentially, it's material that comes from forest that is not quite up to the requirements of FSC, but it must cover five points. And the first one is that it must not come from illegal logging or trade. If it comes from, you know, any operations that violate traditional human rights. Also, it must not come from areas of high high conservation values, and it must not come from areas that are have been significantly converted to plantations, for example. And also, it must not come from areas that are using genetically modified organisms, and or that violate any of the International Labour Organization conventions. And these 5 points are also part of our policy for association. So when a company signs to be a certificate holder, they accept that they won't be, they won't be associated with any of these areas, which is an additional sort of safety requirement that FSC has in their, in the assessment of the supply chain.
Okay, a quick question. I think we've heard about the percentages requested for the labeling and the blending options. I think that has been answered, but how about on your database, online database, can people also filter by country if they're looking for certified resources in a specific country?
Yeah, for sure. That's actually one of the very handy features. I mean, the database is not perfect, but it's actually one of the features that you can certainly use. Yeah.
Excellent. Further about chain of custody verification, how does it work with the kind of volumes and input output? Do you issue transaction certificates like with other certification systems?
At this stage, not transactions certificates per se, but the system does conduct transaction verifications to verify the amounts of materials sold and purchased within the supply chain. And as every other standard certifications management system, the auditor would check what is purchased and what is sold and what is produced in the middle to determine that nothing is, I guess, overproduced and nothing is misleading and sold as FSC.
Okay. A similar question regarding the final stage that does not have to have a certification, so the retailers. How does FSC ensure that marks are used correctly if the retailer is not certified?
Sure, Lisa, are you fine with me covering this one? So for brands and retailers, they can actually contact their FSC national office to become a promotional licensee. And then from there, they will have access to the suite of the FSC trademarks to use for branding and promotional purposes. And before they do develop any release or print any promotional materials that are available to the public, that their national office will do the checks for them. And if you want to find out more information, you can check our website, and it's called being a promotional license holder.
A similar question to you, Vicky. Maybe you can briefly also explain also where to find resources. For retailers, is it okay to have the FSC logo on their clothing or paper in store, but not online or in publications without a promotional license?
Okay. I think that question needs to probably be broken down into two parts. So the first part was, can you have the FSC logo on the garment itself? I guess it needs to be checked by the certificate holder or by, I guess it depends if the person who's asking the question is from the certificate holder's perspective or from a promotional brand perspective. I guess the short answer is yes. Either situation, the use of the FSC brand on the garment needs to be checked either by the certification body or by the national office, depending if it's the FSC label that's used to determine the source material of the garment, or is it used for the purposes of promoting the garment itself?
Okay, thank you. Another product-specific questions for can an FSC logo be put on a wooden product made from FSC controlled wood?
No. FSC controlled wood products or materials cannot be promoted as FSC or FSC controlled wood at all.
So no matter if it's a wooden product or another wood-based
Correct.
product. I mean, we've heard that there is bamboo and rubber certified under FSC. Is there any other plants, or is it mainly restricted to forest?
Well, we mainly focused on forest-based products, but we also have something called non-timber forest products. Bamboo is considered for us a non-timber forest product within the FSC system. But within this area, we have other things like mushrooms, berries, straw. No, is it straw? No, straw, no.
Not straw, but there's honey, there's a lot of like medicines from the forest, like plant-based medicines, ingredients that you would use for cosmetics, so plant extracts. So under that that type of non-timber forest product categories, there's a wide range of other products as well.
Nuts is another one.
Especially for thinking of the kind of next generation feedstock for making pulp for textiles, thinking of bamboo, but then other types of grass or straw or other, I don't know, pineapple leaves, they're not under FSC so far.
No. But mushrooms, maybe one day we will be making textiles out of mushrooms, who knows?
Of course, there is interesting leather alternatives around. But back to the questions we got in. Another question on the mix certificate. Can it be below 70%?
Don't answer that.
It can, but from a labeling and promotional perspective, it cannot be labeled as FSC, and it cannot be promoted as FSC. So as a brand owner, and you want to be able to apply the label on the garment or on the product, it needs to reach that threshold.
Yeah, we have also, I think, one of your board members in the audience, and he's also commenting on the word in the labeled mix and how things might also change or will change, but I think that can also be clarified afterwards. Thank you for that input. We have quite a few questions on the processing side. So good or bad viscose processing and environmental aspects that are happening later on. Can you comment on that? Are you planning to engage there? How do you have any plans or requirements even when thinking of the processing side?
Well, the chain of custody standard, the original, I guess, the framework for our chain of custody standards is a process management system standard. So for us to have social requirements in it, it was such a huge milestone for us. And at the moment, it is our stakeholders, mainly our members, that drive the direction of where our normative framework or our standards will go. So I wouldn't say, no, absolutely, we will not consider environmental requirements within the chain of custody standard, but I can't give a definite answer yet. So it just really comes down to where our stakeholders drive, in particular our members drive that need and that motion for us. Lisa, you might want to add something.
Sorry?
Oh no, I was just gonna say that, yeah, it's part of how how FSC works. I mean, it's stakeholder engagement. So we invite you to become an FSC member and you know, put forth your thoughts.
Thank you. One final question, and also for those who have to leave on time. Yes, the recording will be available. We will also sum that up at the end of the webinar. And also we will come to questions that we could not answer live. We will come back, and also Vicky and Lisa are available for your questions. So one question that also was kind of repetitive in a way. Do you, when a company is certified in the, is it an annual recertification, and how does the kind of the audit, the certification process?
Sure. So when a company is certified, their certificate lasts for 5 years, but every year they will have a surveillance audit. In the short answer, yes.
Okay, I think about certification costs and all this with a lot of about license and requirements again. So definitely there is room for more time with you and for contacting you. So thank you for providing your email addresses as well. And thank you everyone for handing in all the questions. Before we conclude with a final ask to Lisa, please do contact us at MMCF Roundtable at textileexchange.org if you're not part of our online hub community yet. The hub community is really the platform to stay informed, to explore a library, to connect with each other. We have probably almost 400 industry experts and MMCF on our hub. You can start discussions, and you will also find a lot of resources there. And so please contact Prana or myself also, or with that email, to sign up for the hub. And as we have also a lot of people, we saw it in the questions of the demand side, of the buyer side. Lisa, what would you like to leave with us? How shall brands and retailers get active, and how can they get engaged too?
Thank you, Simone. Yeah, I guess the call to action from the FSC side would be that you have a lot of power, so you can help us transform this sector, this value chain. I would say by you know, having a preference in your procurement policies for FSC, that would send a signal down to the rest of the supply chain, saying that there is a demand for FSC, and that will drive change throughout. So that is my call to action to you. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I will be happy to support you in any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, everyone. And bye-bye.
Thank you to our speakers. And thank you for participating in today's webinar. As a friendly reminder, all unanswered questions will be answered via email, and an email will be sent to all registered participants with a link to today's presentation. That concludes our webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.